Welcome to today's Corporate Venturing Insider series. Today, I am so happy to have Steve Wesley with us. He's going to share with us his journey into venture capital and more. Steve, welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So, I'd like to start the interview with a simple question. What was your journey into corporate venturing?
Well, my journey, I think, is a little different from others. When I graduated, well, first, I should explain. I am probably the one person you know who grew up in Silicon Valley when there was nothing there but Stanford University, Hewlett-Packard, and a lot of fruit trees.
Yeah.
No Silicon Valley. My dad was a beer salesman. So I had a front row seat to the most dramatic rise in innovation and wealth creation in human history. When I graduated from Stanford University, I made a beeline to the Department of Energy because we were all talking about solar and green energy back in the 70s, and it sounded good, but it turned out to be way out of the money. We call it the bleeding edge, not the leading edge.
Yeah.
And so I had gone to the Department of Energy. I worked in the Office of Conservation and Solar. I had 2 books published when I was 23 and 24 years old, ahead of everybody else. But none of these technologies made financial sense. And I had a wake-up call and realized I better go back to Stanford, get my MBA in business, and so I could figure out how to make a profit with all this stuff. And I became an entrepreneur. I was CEO of some companies. I'm best known for having taken eBay public in 1998. I did better there than I ever dreamed. And I ran for public office. I'd been very politically active, and I was elected controller and chief financial officer of the state of California, the world's 5th largest economy. It was great, but in the middle of the term, there was a colossal meltdown in California having to do with an energy company called Enron.
Oh my gosh.
Our economy tanked. Our governor was recalled for the first time in California history, and overnight, I am all of a sudden working with Austrian bodybuilder named Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, Arnold, yeah.
And so I actually crossed party lines. I worked with him to pass the state's fiscal solution to the crisis. I ran for governor myself in 2006. I lost by 3.5 points. My wife was delighted. We came back to Silicon Valley and I started our venture fund. And so we've been focused on sustainable energy, mobility, and buildings for the last 18 years. We've done this very successfully financially. We've raised 5 funds. We're now raising a 6th fund. And what we have learned is contrary to the standard wisdom, which is go get financial investors, get CalPERS, where I used to serve on the board, or New York Commons, or the Stanford Endowment. That's good and well. We think having corporate strategic investors is better for 3 reasons. They can help provide extra deal flow, they can provide world-class due diligence, and they can become customers. And we realized that contrary to what everybody said, having a lot of coordinated strategic investors gives you more power than these other firms. So that's how we got there.
I need to double click already on this. These superpowers, so first you talked about deal flow. How do you manage through all these LPs to improve your deal flow?
Yeah. So everybody says when they want to impress you or get you to invest in their fund, we have smart guys. You know, Stanford, Harvard. We have plenty of people who've gone to Stanford and Harvard, but what really makes you smart, not the college degree, it is, are you seeing all of the best deal flow from around the world every day? So this is not easy. It's taken us 18 years to get the connections at the best universities globally, contacts in Israel and China and St. Gallen's in Zurich and Cambridge, and you must have a global network.
And a trusted network.
And a trusted network. This has taken us almost 20 years, but today we review between 4,500 and 5,000 companies a year.
That's a lot.
More than almost anyone. For the viewers, this is like 14 a day, 7 days a week, including holidays. you really must move quickly, and the more you see, the more comparative deals in a sector, the smarter you get.
I think this is pattern matching in some ways, right?
It's pattern matching, exactly.
Now, can you share, actually maybe with this 20 years of experience, if you could go back in time and you would say, Steve, this is my advice to you for the next 20 years of venture capital, what would you have done differently?
I will tell you, we're not that smart. We've made every mistake in the book along the way. I think for anybody considering investing in a venture fund, whatever you do, don't invest in a first-time or second-time fund. Those people are just going to make a lot of mistakes, and you can't help it. It's no one's fault. Now that we're coming up to our sixth fund, corporations can depend on us because they've seen our track record. We know how to work with corporates. We have a bigger team than other venture firms because we dedicate a specific individual to every one of our partners, because our investors are looking for a market rate of return. No one wants to lose money, but they're not looking to make sure they get 21% IRR instead of 17. Of course, 21 is better and 17 is better than 14. What they really want is to make sure that they are not missing any technology or any company that could be an intrinsic threat. And if they see something that is really new and powerful, maybe some new AI-driven tool, they need to buy that technology before their competitor does, or their business could be gone like that.
So in a way, a little defensive move.
Well, it's defense and offense at the same time.
At the same time.
We don't want you to realize the threats and then do nothing. We want you to realize the threats and then
Act on
ideally go through a quick process, quick is the key word, of partnering, investing, and if it's a true strategic fit, buying that company. If you do that quickly, you win. Let me just give you an example. I mentioned it today on the floor. Even Google, right smack in the middle of Silicon Valley, with one of the biggest balance sheets in the world, said, doesn't matter how many people we have, we are not going fast enough. We must grow through acquisition. So they go off and buy YouTube, they buy all these other companies. YouTube they buy for $1 billion and change, and people say, oh, you pay too much. Now it provides a worth of over 20 billion.
Absolutely.
They do things like Waymo that they have built, dramatic game-changing technologies.
Which took more than a decade to build.
Exactly.
And loss-making for a very long time before it gets to the point where it can be highly profitable.
It's exactly right. It would have taken much longer had they not been buying other companies to build up the network.
It does make sense. But let me go back to this corporate LP. So the second point you said is it helps with due diligence. Now that one is really interesting because these LPs indeed have world-class experts in their own domain. But how do you harness it?
So there's two really interesting points here. The first question is, do you want to invest in this company? And we do this global search. And then we'll go, if it's in the energy sector, to Duke Energy, who's an LP, to E.ON, that's an LP, maybe to ABB in Switzerland, maybe to China Light and Power or Tokyo Gas, and say, okay, you're interested in EV fleet management, or you're interested in virtual power plants. We think this is the best company globally. Have you seen anything better? And we can call people around the world. And if everybody comes back and says, wow, we haven't seen anything like this, we think you should invest, Nicolas. But also, we'd like to invest next to you.
Oh, I see.
The minute I have that call, it goes to the top of our list. And it's just a very positive synergy. And the more we can do this, the better. As I like to joke, it's like playing poker. And in poker, it's a statistical game. Whoever has the most statistical background and IQ points usually wins. But in this game, if I know that Duke Energy and Tokyo Gas and E.ON and RWE like this company the best, or Electricité de France, and others don't know that, it's like I get to peek under the card.
You do peek under the card.
No one can beat me then. And so we're, simply put, looking for an unfair advantage, and this gives us a huge one. This is why we like corporate strategics so much.
And that can go very quick, this feedback.
It goes like that. Now, I must say, there is a continuum of firms. Some of them are still in the dark ages, and one person has to call someone, and then it goes up the hierarchy, and then it must go back to headquarters in another country. Those people fall behind. The ones that have an active corporate VC muscle, and they hear, we often joke, I love to hear yes, I love to hear no. We just need to know one way or another so we move on. Corporates are increasingly realizing that they do need to move quickly to get the best deals.
Now you said there was 2 points about the due diligence.
Well, the due diligence, one, it helps us with the due diligence a lot. But the second point is it helps us win the most competitive deals. Because if I go to Nicola and I say, look, I give you our money at this pre-money valuation, you could say, but Steve, I have Andreessen and I have Sequoia and they're interested too. And I'll say, yes, but we can walk you in to the C-suite at 14 of the world's largest utilities. No one else can do that.
Which was your third point about they become customers of your portfolio companies.
Exactly correct.
And how often is that the winning argument in a competitive syndicate?
More often than you would think. They want to know, have you had some big exits I've heard of? A lot of new green VCs, they have no IPOs. Maybe they had 2 IPOs, but they're both SPACs and they're worth 19 cents a share and it didn't work out so well. We've had 9 IPOs, 4 multi-billion-dollar exits. You know, Tesla, a $1 trillion company. Last month anyway.
Yeah, not this month.
Not this month, but still, half a trillion's not bad even
not
for you.
Not bad in
even
any measure. Yeah. I'm looking for the next Tesla, so I definitively hope to get to your success at some point.
I invest in our fund, I'll tell you.
All right. You've heard it. Now, there is one thing which is interesting about your venture capital is that it's also mission-driven.
Correct.
Okay. Which sometimes people will say, wait a second, you're mission-driven, so you're not going to go for the best financial outcome. Can you remove this myth for all of us?
First and foremost, I'm a capitalist. I'm not investing in my heart. I'm not investing to change the world. We do know this. The entire world is moving towards a sustainable future. Let me just give you 2 examples. One, a lot of people are saying, oh my gosh, Donald Trump doesn't like renewable energy and said global warming is a scam. Well, Donald Trump is not connected with the real world or the facts. The facts are, I think 187 countries are still part of the Paris protocols. There's only 4 that have stepped out: Iraq, Yemen, Libya, and the United States. This is a terrible group to be part of, but the rest of the world is still moving forward full speed. Every company in the world essentially has made a commitment to get to carbon net neutral. Now, for some firms, it's by 2030. Great. For others, it's more difficult. Heavy manufacturing, maybe they commit to by 2040. For oil companies, and it's an important part of the puzzle, maybe it's 2050. Our job is to help people get to carbon net neutral without losing their shirts. That's important while making a profit. And we must make a market rate of return. But if we make a market rate of return and help people get a strategic advantage over their competition, they become LPs for life, and it is a win-win relationship.
Now, you made the point that don't invest in first-time or second-time manager. So if you work back to 20 years and you want to convince LPs, you would have a different pitch to them. And I think part of it was your background, your experience in energy and everything. So for the first-time managers who are listening, how would you pitch?
So as a first-time manager, I was fortunate because I could say I was an entrepreneur. A lot of VCs aren't. If you're going to invest with VCs, find someone who's been an entrepreneur. I'd help take eBay public. It was a $30 billion company.
That was a good one.
Second, I committed a lot of my money and found partners that would too. Here's a story you won't hear other places. I served on the board at CalPERS and STIRS. They had over 1,000 vehicles, and investment vehicles. And I asked the chief investment officer, what is the number one correlate to superior performance? Is it past performance, I think? And he said, actually, number one highest correlation to strong performance is percent of GP commitment. Now, I was running for governor back then. I said, okay, that's lovely. I put that piece of data in my back pocket. But when I did this first fund, I remembered that. And I knew it was important to say I was an entrepreneur, but we put, I think, 5%, the partners and I, in that first fund. And people said it's okay to come in. We still, even though we'd invested in Tesla, that was probably our least good fund, but every fund after got better and better. So I don't want to discourage young people, but for most corporates that have more of a conservative bent, you probably want someone that has been around the block a few times and has a track record of wins.
And GP commit is really the percentage you're committing to the fund
Yes.
next to the LPs. So when you say 5%, it's 5% of your own money and your partners, 95% from the
Yes.
LPs.
This is essential to know because all of the venture funds, and I've been on the other side of the table too, say, Nicolas, I am really deeply committed. And you must say, Steve, how committed are you? If I say 1%, you should kick me right out the door, because what that means is I want a lot of your money. I'm going to make a bunch of money myself on fees, and if I don't get any return, what the heck, come visit me in my summer house in France because I've got all your money already.
Through the management fee.
Through the 2 and 20 management fees. You don't want people to be going to the casino with your money if you're TDK or Honda or IBM. You want people to have skin in the game, so there is what we say complete alignment, skin in the game.
Now, for first-time manager who can't afford the 5%, should they loan the money to get to that point of commitment?
They should put in as much money as they can, and they should start with a smaller fund so they can show the world they know what they're doing.
I like that. That's actually a very practical approach. Now, going back to corporate VCs, what it is that in all your career as a venture capitalist you've seen done wrong, and I think it's fair to say that CVCs from 20 years ago were not as good as today.
Correct.
So you must have seen quite some mistakes along the way.
Yes.
What would be the 3 red signals for you?
So, a great question. The first one is you must be prepared to move quickly. If you're not moving quickly, you miss out on all of the good deals. Second, a lot of corporate VCs struggle to hire people, and they will choose more often than you would think lovely, experienced people in their corporate who are used to moving slowly for 30 years in a certain corporate culture. Don't hire that person. You probably need to hire a venture capitalist from outside to come in or to partner with a firm like us.
With a sense of urgency.
With a sense of urgency. But the other thing is we typically can pay more at our venture firm than a corporate. And so the good corporates all come work for us. The ones who underperform and don't have any wins stay in the corporate. And then the corporations give them big checks to invest even though they don't have successes. And they say, we can only pay people $90,000 a year. You're not going to get a competitive VC for that sort of rate. So this is why almost every major corporation in the world is beginning to hire 1 or 2 people internally, but also work kind of as an insurance policy with 1 or 2 venture firms. And sometimes we say the further are away from Silicon Valley, probably the more you need to partner with someone who has their finger on the pulse of the next tech trends.
And a third red signal.
The third red signal is, I'm going to give you a slightly different answer here, but it's all about how quickly these firms not only can invest, but how quickly they can partner, do a pilot, and then say, okay, within 3 to 6 months, I know whether I want to invest, and then whether I want to buy. But you must have someone in the corporation whose job it is to integrate the company you buy. And a lot of people say, okay, we buy you and I'm not quite sure what to do with you, and you sit over here and we'll occasionally do a phone call. That doesn't work. I cannot be more emphatic that for companies to succeed in the future, like Google or Microsoft, you do that by quickly identifying key technologies and key companies, one. Then you buy them, number two. But then you must have a separate team that flies in and is responsible for integrating the company. Because if you get your company integrated into Microsoft or Google or any other company and the CEO never talks to you, that's not going to work so well. It must become part of the new body.
That makes total sense. Now, how do you, I mean, you meet so many potential LPs. They are not yet your LPs. You must see some which are like the dream corporate. You can see they have a sense of urgency. They know what they want. They tell you what they want, which is really probably the best of the best. But you have some corporates who just don't know, or you feel like they are going to be slow. How do you handle the communication with them and maybe raise their awareness?
Yeah. So people would say, oh, Steve, you probably want to have big company names. They're okay, but that's not the most important thing. They say, Steve, I bet you want companies who write the biggest check. That's how other VC firms are. That's not us. I want the best partner. And you say, what does that mean to be the best partner?
Exactly.
They're friendly, they're likable. The best partner is one that moves quickest. We have a game in America we play a lot called Battleship. And you basically are guessing what is a hit and what is a miss. All we ask is that you quickly tell us, that's a miss. No problem. We move on to the next company, the next technology, or it's a hit. But we cannot wait 3 or 4 or 5 weeks. That's not how the new world works. As I said in the presentation today, in the old world, it was a, if it's not broken, don't fix it mentality.
Yeah.
And everybody needed to be careful, and you might lose your job if you made a mistake. The new mentality is, if you're not busy obsoleting your current business model, someone else is. And by the way, the entire German economy is now suffering because they were very dependent on their auto industry, and for 100 years, auto industry in Germany performed great. I have a German car. But the future is going electric, and right behind it, autonomous. Germans didn't see that so well. By the way,
I think they saw it, but they just didn't like it, and so they didn't act on it.
When you're doing so well, no one wants to change. It's called the paradox of number one.
Yeah.
By the way, Toyota suffers from that. They're going to have to find a higher gear. America suffers that. You know, for 50 years, everything goes good in America up and to the right. But you're only as good as your next quarter. We're already seeing China come with the next gen AI. Europe is getting more competitive. You must always be lifting your game or others zoom by you.
No, I can see that. And I see China being extremely fast at implementing technology.
China is extraordinary. Most patents granted, fast-growing economy. People say, oh, China's okay, but they just copy things. Maybe 25 years ago, that was true. Today, most patents in the world, great technology universities, venture. But of the 10 largest market cap companies in the world, 5 are in California, 1 is in China, 0 in Europe. So California still is in the pole position, but we must work hard to stay there. And by the way, the reason we're in the pole position, it's because we have so many of the best and brightest immigrants from China and India and Iran and so on. It's not because of the few natives like me that were back there 50 or 60 years ago.
There's huge value in getting immigrants who are very talented and create innovation, and it's true. So on Monday, I was actually in Shanghai visiting one of my portfolio companies called Autoflight. It's a eVTOL, vertical takeoff and landing electric aircraft.
We track this area carefully.
And they have the world's records of the longest distance with one charge. They have the world's records for formation, flying. They really are pushing the boundaries of possible. So Your point about China, I think, is something we should not forget.
You know, when I grew up in California in the 70s, we were all laid back, and we didn't like those people in New York because they all were so aggressive and they move quickly and they're impatient. Now in Silicon Valley, we have become the New Yorkers, only worse, because we wake up every day looking over our shoulder at China and saying, these people are coming quickly, we need to up our game. And so far we are. This is easy for me because my wife is Chinese and I've got 2 kids. I'm the only one in the house who does not speak Mandarin. We see where the future is going.
You speak some Mandarin, no?
A little bit. Pero mi español es bueno.
Okay. All right, very good. So let's go back to corporate venturing.
Sí.
We talked about the 3 red signals. Now, what are the 3 things when you see a CVC that tells you, okay, I'm willing to work with them, maybe I bring them to a syndicate, because on top of my LPs, which brings me superpowers, these ones are maybe not my LPs, but they can also bring equivalent or adjacent type of superpowers.
We look for LPs, ideally to have a global playing field. Those are the ones we can help the most. One of the tests we have, this may make you laugh, but if they say, oh, we're interested in you, and you must talk to this person who reports to this person, who reports to this person, who reports to the CEO, that's not so good.
Yeah.
If they say, we would like to invest in you, and by the way, can you come out and present to our board in 4 weeks? We have some very important decisions about the future. We need an external perspective. And then, and by the way, this happened in real life. We had one of our largest utilities, I cannot say who, said, we need you to come out and do a 3-hour presentation to our entire executive team telling us what the next 10 years must look like. And then we need you to give us an additional half hour telling us what our M&A strategy should be. And I said, I think McKinsey would charge you 3 or 4 million for this, and Goldman Sachs would like an extra $1 million for the M&A strategy, but we will do it. When do you need it? And they said, 3 weeks. And I said, you have 40,000 employees. It's a big utility. You need us to, I said, yes. Our people understand the last 100 years. They need help with the next 10 years. We don't have people who are AI experts who understand virtual power plants and so on. So we did it. We came off the 3 hours like, whoa, that was intense. The next day they called back and said, we need you to come back again in 3 weeks, do the same presentation in an hour format for our board of directors. They must hear this. So these are the things we do, but we look for a connection with the top. Otherwise, we're not sure the company is really serious or moving fast.
That makes a lot of sense. But back to my question about corporate VCs that you want to work with. What are the 3 things you ask first?
So basically, how quickly do you work? Are we connected at the top? 2, we're always looking for a global footprint. In the old days, we have some firms and they're just really quite regional. It's hard for us to help them as much. And I think there's one third thing, and that is a lot of firms got to be big and important because they manufacture and they like asset-heavy, capital-intense businesses. In the future, we believe those firms are going to not perform quite as well. The future is moving towards digitization, software, IoT, AI. Now, there's always going to be manufacturing. Firms like NVIDIA are extraordinary. But NVIDIA's not winning just because they make the best chips. They are winning because they were smart enough to create an ecosystem with software. This is what we're trying to help some of the world's largest manufacturing companies with, to integrate AI, robotics with their already world-class manufacturing.
Actually, you talk about NVIDIA, so now I want to go back to some of your amazing successes. I mean, you have Tesla, Luminar, and many other unicorns. At the time of the investment of these amazing successes, is there like connecting the dots that allows you to see why they would be successful, why they could be so successful?
So, as a venture capitalist, our job is to do 3 things. One is to have a perspective, a vision of where things are going in the world. and I'll give you two examples or three. Second, then I have to run out and find the best company in that sector. And then you have to invest ideally in the A and double down in the B and the C and the D if it's taking off. In 2007, everybody in the world, when you said electric cars, they said, oh, like golf carts, they go 8-9 miles an hour and you have to plug them in every 20 minutes. And we said, no, lithium ion has changed everything. Cost down curve like this. It's now time for electric vehicles. And everybody, including my wife, thought I was nuts because I'd known Elon Musk now for 30 years. And he said, Steve, I wish you to join the board before we even invested. You understand where this is going. And so we had to not only realize that the cost down curve of lithium ion batteries and this new battery chemistry, lithium ion, is changing the entire landscape from anything anybody had seen. And Tesla did exactly right. They started out with a very expensive $100,000 car, but within 3 to 4 to 5 years, they were already developing the Model 3 and the Model Y, so their market share increased 10x. Model Y in 2018 or 19 became the biggest selling car in the world, gas or electric, all in a very quick time. So we're looking for the trends, then we're waiting for the inflection point. You've got to know where the inflection point is. I like hydrogen, but the inflection point's still 5 years out. Fusion, wonderful, probably 25 years out. So we can't invest in that yet.
I hope not.
So you have to know where the inflection point is, and we've done a pretty good job of that.
And so if you think about these companies, I mean, let's talk about Tesla. Clearly you knew Elon Musk, so you knew how exceptional he was already then.
Yeah. Exceptional in many ways. He's brilliant. He sees the future. He moves very quickly. He's also erratic and stubborn, so it was not always clear, and he has emotional ups and downs. And I will tell you, he was a very different human being then than he is today. I think he's perhaps become more challenging. But I think his most positive trait is he has a force of will and he moves quickly. We talk with other auto company execs and they have the same vision, but they have to check with headquarters and dip their toe in the water and come back in 6 months, have a few meetings, and then maybe do an investment and then some pilots, and then go to the board again. With Elon, he, for better or worse, he moves the agenda quickly.
And is that the same trait you saw in all of your other unicorns founders?
I think most all of them have this, but I just want to say something controversial. A lot of people ask, I teach at Stanford's Graduate School of Business, and they say, do you have to be an asshole to be a great CEO? A terrible person, a screamer. You do not.
Yeah.
Some of the best CEOs in the world, you might say, who? Reed Hastings at Netflix, one of the best executives I have ever seen. Jensen Huang, one of the best executives I've ever seen. And you would want these people to raise your children if something happened to you. They're also extraordinary human beings.
And very kind.
And very kind. You do not have to be flamboyant, vindictive. Separate that out altogether.
I really like that. That's a good golden nugget for everyone to listen to.
By the way, those people are going to be CEO for much longer than some of the other people.
But they also, I mean, the two you mentioned are very mission-driven. This is their life, their life's mission.
Well, and this is the perplexing thing about Musk, because when I started, it was all about saving the planet from global warming and so on. I think somewhere along the way that mission was lost, and now Tesla has advocated to get rid of the solar tax credits or get rid of the EV credits, and many of us are feeling what happened to the green Tesla. Now we have a different Tesla.
I see.
So I hope Tesla's successful.
I'm sure you do. Are you still a shareholder in Tesla?
No.
Okay, so that's all exited.
Let me say it differently. I hope every EV firm succeeds, because we must get to this green future in simple terms, and this is an important story not everyone remembers. When Jimmy Carter came out and said, we're going to pass CAFE standards in the US, we're going to increase the mile per gallon requirement from what at the time was like 12 or 13 miles per gallon to 26 miles per gallon. And the business community rose up in arms, General Motors, and said, he's a socialist, he's a job killer, we can't do it. And the people in Congress said, General Motors, you already sell cars in Europe that get 26 miles per gallon. You need to sell them here too. You're already doing it. Don't say it's impossible.
Yeah.
And Carter pushed it through. That was 1978. Zero change in fuel efficiency until Barack Obama comes into power in 2007 or 8. And he says, it's been 35 years. There's no other industry. Cell phones, laptops, the internet, auto haven't improved fuel efficiency. I'm going to raise it from 25 to 36 miles per gallon. And they say the same thing. You're a socialist, a job killer. We can't do it. And they said, no, in Europe, we're already doing it. But then 2 years later, Mr. Musk comes out and says, here's my Tesla Model S. It has equivalent of 97 miles per gallon. So forget the 26, forget the 36. Technology can make a huge difference, and you need to let those people push things forward. So that's why I root for all EV companies, including BYD today.
BYD is amazing. I mean, look at their growth, look at their products, the quality of their products. I think this is sometimes what we need. We need to have these pressure points from the outside for us to wake up.
Competition's a good thing. When I grew up, American cars were great, and then in the 70s, we stopped being competitive. And the Japanese blew by us, and we thought they were terrible. But they just made better cars. And American consumers bought them like crazy. Why not? And then 10 years later, the Koreans blew by the Japanese. And they were working harder with better cars. That's the way of the world. Then Tesla came roaring back. There was a famous article in Germany who said, why can't the Germans make great innovative cars like Tesla? As Americans, we thought we'd never hear that from the Germans. And now the Chinese come with a leap forward. This is the way of the world. As a VC, my job, and we have Volkswagen Audi as an investor, is to keep competition going and to provide the best product possible for competitors. Or remember Steve Jobs, someone else is going to be obsoleting you.
And that's a game. So let me ask about, because you have clearly deep insights into energy, even before you became a venture capitalist. So how do you see the rise of AI with this massive, and you could argue exponential increase of energy demand? With the grid the US have, but actually it's all around the world, the grids have not progressed so fast. How do you reconcile the two? How do we plan for that? Is that where you can spot some inflection points already, which could become your investments in the future?
So first, let me just say, AI is scary. It's an incredibly powerful tool. I'm sure when the first person who developed a laser thought, oh my God, this is pretty amazing, but I better be careful of who I point it at.
Oh, I like the analogy with laser.
Yeah, it's just, you got to be careful. If you come from Silicon Valley, many people say, I know you Silicon Valley guys, you overhype everything. A lot of this is true. But I will just tell you, I don't think semiconductors were overhyped. Maybe a little bit initially, but given what's happened, it's probably underhyped. Computers, underhyped. The internet, I remember vividly, people said, Steve, you have lost your mind going to work for an online garage sale, flea market, this eBay thing. No one is going to buy things off the internet. It's like a dark hole. Who knows whether you're going to get those things bought? Well, gee whiz, now you can't imagine living without an Amazon or an eBay in your life. Mm-hmm. I believe that artificial intelligence will be even bigger than the internet. It just takes time for human beings to get to understand how to use these tools. It's just all these other things like the internet and semiconductors and computers were tools. This is more like having an intelligent assistant that's read every book ever written at will to serve you, who can give you answers in 10 seconds. This is wholly different. So we must get used to this new world, or someone else is. We must find the best ways to harness it, or someone else will. And most of all, you need to pay attention and move quickly. By the way, in the old world, no one wants to see mistakes, and you get fired if you make a mistake. In the new world, people realize you're going to make mistakes. The only way you get progress is to try and fail, try and fail. It's the Thomas Edison approach. This is what we're doing here.
If anything, I think what comes across what you've said in this interview is the biggest mistake is to be slow.
It's the biggest mistake. I want to come back to one issue, because Trump is now standing up all over and saying, I'm throwing all the immigrants out. Immigrants are terrible. America's built on immigrants. 99% of Americans are immigrants from somewhere. What makes us successful? Not that Americans are special. It's that we have all these people who came to our country with nothing, fleeing poverty or dictators, and they're risk takers. That's what's different between Americans and Europeans. We are just a nation of risk takers. A lot of us have chips on our shoulder. It used to be people like Andy Grove who were fleeing the Holocaust. Now, a generation of people in the 70s and 80s that were fleeing the religious regime in Iran after the Shah fell. Now it's a lot of people leaving China because it's a dictatorship, and they come to America. So we are lucky that we've become a magnet for the best and brightest, but not the best and brightest cautious people, the best and brightest willing to take risks. Jensen Huang, for me, is on the top of that pyramid.
So I want to double click on that. The chip on the shoulder, the immigrants, I see that as an opportunity for VCs or CVCs to have a positive bias towards the founders.
Yeah.
They have something to prove.
Yeah.
They are going to do whatever it takes. Is that what you look for founders? Is that
Absolutely, 100%.
Okay.
Let me tell you my wife's story. My wife is Chinese, grew up in Hong Kong, family from Guangzhou. It was the dream to come to America. And she came, her father passed away tragically, single mom, didn't speak much English, 5 kids. What's tougher than having 5 kids, no money, not speaking the language, and being a single mom? Every one of the kids has done pretty well, and my wife worked her way up, got a college degree from a public school, not the most famous, at a big firm called Accenture doing IT consulting, because in my world in tech, no one cares if you have a little accent, no one cares what you look like, what ethnicity, what country. If you know technology and can solve the problem, you get hired and you usually get a big paycheck. And she moved up, and she realized at a certain point, a lot of the white guys were becoming partner, and a lot of the Asian women who were doing all the hard work somehow weren't getting in the top. And she said, okay, fine, I leave and go help build a new startup. She took it public and made millions. And it makes me proud to be an American, because the classic American story is my wife's story. It's a Chinese immigrant, comes here with nothing, grows up practically on welfare, and ends up helping build a company and making millions. Not every place in the world can you do that. And I take particular pride that she didn't come from the right family. She didn't look like everybody else. She got teased a little bit growing up, but it didn't slow her down. It made her tougher and better. That's what gives us an edge.
That's very nice. Now, going back to my question on energy.
Yeah.
So this big demand of energy coming from this generative AI exponential growth, how can we handle it? How should we think about it?
This is one of the biggest problems of our generation, because demand for energy is going like this, like nothing we've ever seen. Huge data centers to power AI. At the same time, all of a sudden it's 1 out of 5 cars is electric, and next year it's going to be 1 out of 4, and pretty soon it's going to be 50%, and before you know it, it's all of them. A confluence of these two things, electrification of the entire transportation grid and the data centers, the utility executives have a great challenge. And they need to double the power production and become greener at the same time. That means turning off the coal and eventually the natural gas. So how do you do this? As often, when you have to solve a big problem, you break it into pieces. Short term, you're going to see more solar and wind and batteries built than ever before.
Yeah, the proven technologies.
But they're not only proven, they're also the lowest cost.
Highly scaled.
And the fastest to get to market. Longer term, and there will be some natural gas to get us there, but natural gas is still heavily polluting, and it takes a longer time to build. As you look out 5 years and 10 years, I think you will see geothermal come down in price and become more prevalent. You will also see over time, but probably more in the 10 to 20 year time frame, nuclear small modular reactors, what's called Gen 4 fission, becoming more prominent. But it's not just important to know which technologies, it's important to know which ones now, which ones in 5 years, which one 10 years. The cost curves are always changing. You have to understand the inflection point. This is where we help companies.
I think it's the second time you mentioned cost curves. I can see this is one of your key criteria for deciding not necessarily where to invest, but when to invest.
It's the when. So again, I must tell you the story. It's my crazy Californian story.
Okay, let's go.
So when I came to found our venture firm in 2008, I said, look, we've looked at all the cost curves, and the solar growth is going to go like this. And people said, you're crazy, because for the last 20 years looking back, solar growth, it had barely moved at all. And the reason is, when solar cost $78 a watt, which is what it cost back in 1980 when I worked at the Department of Energy, no one anywhere wants to buy solar. When it comes down to $60 a watt, no one wants to buy solar. 40? No one. 20? No one. We knew solar had to get down to about $4 a watt. And in fact, no one thought it would go here. They said crazy Californians. The reality is the curve went like that, and it continues to go like that. Do you know what the cost per watt to build for solar is today?
In the cents, 20 cents?
You're exactly right. Yeah. You're the first person who's known. It's 20 cents going to 15 cents, down from $78.
It's orders of magnitudes.
A lot of people still think solar is $20 a watt, and they make the wrong business judgment. They think Trump's elected, so everybody's going to start drilling oil wells and coal mines again. This is not the way the world is going. You must look at the cost curves.
I think there is also an argument that all of these technologies we invest in, which are green, are actually so important for energy resilience no matter what.
No matter what. And this is just one thing I tell even my most conservative friends. Global warming is getting worse every year. We can track it. There's no uncertainty whatsoever. The only question is, what is the rate? Unfortunately, curves in life don't continue on the same rate. The rate changes. We're seeing the rate of heating up of the planet increasing. And the good news is, you don't have to take my word for it. Our good friends at Swiss Re and Munich Re, the reinsurers for all the insurance companies in the world, they have all this data, and every year they say, you must raise the rates because we're having more calamitous energy events. These are the facts. Yeah. It's a sad thing for America that our president denies the facts, but all of the thoughtful people understand. The people running companies understand. And even the oil companies are, generally speaking, all on a path to get to carbon net neutral by 2050. I want to give a particular shout out to Equinor and the Norwegians for really being on the cutting edge. But even Saudi Aramco and the others, BP, Dutch Shell, they see where the world is going.
So if we think about the next 10 years, what are you most hopeful for?
So there's this big transition going on, and I want people who are watching to understand this. My whole life, your whole life, it's been about how do you produce electrons or molecules most cost effectively. We're now getting really good at this. The cost of producing electrons is heading towards zero. But the big issue now is how do you manage the electrons based on the time of day? Now utility is essentially going three ways. It goes from utilities to buildings to vehicles, and it goes back and forth based on the hour and the minute and the time of day. This is what I'm optimistic about, because in the past you had to build capacity to handle those few moments of peak demand.
The worst case moments, yeah.
Now you can spread out the cost curve with batteries and time of day pricing and transfer of power based on the pricing. This is exciting stuff. And once again, Silicon Valley is at the forefront. Most of the leading AI companies, almost all have immigrant founders, but it's happening in San Francisco.
Actually, in Silicon Valley, we invested in a company doing sodium-ion batteries for grid, which is all about this energy storage you need, but without relying on all these materials like lithium. So I think there is interesting innovation happening in Silicon Valley, even on the energy side, not only on the AI side.
People are using AI to develop next-gen manufacturing techniques. We've always done that, but now the curve is going quickly. We're using AI to literally develop humanoid robots that aren't just doing repetitive tasks, but you can ask them to do things and they will understand. We're using AI to more quickly identify which new materials and battery chemistries will be most efficient, less combustible, highest power density. We're moving forward faster than all of these areas because of AI. It's not just a tool, it's like having the world's smartest assistant at your fingertips with instantaneous answers.
Yep, instant recall of everything, which we cannot do as humans.
Exactly right.
So if I'm thinking about the next 12 months, what are you excited to invest in? Without sharing too much, of course.
But I was going to say, tell you all my secrets. You need to invest in our fund.
So, to the limit of teasing enough.
We have just produced 3 cutting-edge reports on AI in the utilities, AI in the oil and gas sector, and AI in the auto sector. And we're doing a new one on AI in next-gen manufacturing. We're really going deep on how AI is changing all of these industries. I just give you one example. It's the easiest one to understand. Every company has customer service, and no one likes customer service. It's relatively easy if you're MasterCard or Citibank, people call it about the same rate. Where it's really hard is with utilities or airlines, where the demand curve is like this, and then you get a bad weather day in Chicago, and every plane around the country gets backed up. Or you have an outage if you're PG&E, and all of a sudden, or a tornado, you get 5,000 calls. But with airlines, it might be 5,000 calls in 20 languages. One of the most impressive firms we've seen is a firm called MIDA, and they do AI next-gen customer support. So if you're a big company, your customer support team can flex up from 1 person to 5,000 in about 1 second. As many people as you need, they will be available as automated assistants. But here's the part you may not know. MIDA can provide simultaneous language translation in every language on the planet. There's none of this, are you a Spanish speaker, dial here. If you're a German speaker, you're out of luck.
Straight in.
You don't press any button. If you start speaking Mandarin, it gives you your answer in Mandarin. You've missed a flight and you're here from Thailand, you speak in Thai, it answers in Thai. You speak in Farsi, you get answer in Farsi. You do half English and half Spanish, we call it Spanglish, it gives you a perfect answer back. Wow. These are the things of the future. It's because we see so much deal flow from around the world. We have ties at universities. We see these things first. I'm not that so smart, but the machine we've built at our firm is a pretty clever organism.
Now, earlier, you touched on something interesting. Earlier, you said your soft spot is Series A.
Yes.
So does it mean that you want to see already a product being working?
So we have a family of funds. We have a seed fund that invests $500K to $5 million, and that's early stage. And then we have later stage A and B round investors. So we can invest across the spectrum. But most of our partners are strategic, and they don't want to see a 23-year-old with a ponytail living in their mom's apartment, they need to know there are
Yeah.
at least 5 or 10 or 15 employees to provide the support. We like to see firms that maybe have a customer or two or some revenue growth, but not always for the seed fund. Sometimes we'll take a leap.
Is a seed fund as a way of building a pipeline for you? I mean, what is
Yes.
the purpose? Okay.
We had not planned to build a seed fund, and our investors said, look, you're a big player in this industrial efficiency, sustainability space. We don't want you to miss any of the cool stuff early on. Go raise a seed fund.
Okay.
And,
So that was more of a tactical, but the strategy is really your Series A onwards.
It's tactical, but again, our LPs are saying we want you to be our early warning system into potential threats and opportunities, and they're both important.
So let me ask a challenging question maybe. Who do you see as your customer, the LPs or the entrepreneurs?
Both.
All right.
And they're each, you must understand every customer's needs. The LP has certain corporate goals. They must make a profit. You must understand. But then it's important to understand who are the ultimate customers. So the good news for us is with our founders, our LPs are the customers, but sometimes they're not. But it's a virtuous circle. It works pretty well.
So today we are at GCV Monterey 2025. I owe a lot to GCV for helping me to learn about how to do corporate VC well. Why do you spend time and contribute to GCV?
We love GCV because it's one stop. Virtually all of the major strategics in the world, literally hundreds from every quarter of the planet, come here for this 2.5 days. We come every year. It's essential. And each year we used to send one person, then it was 2, now it's 3, next year it may be 4. If you have a corporate strategic and you want to up your game, or you're thinking about starting a corporate for strategic, this is the best place on the planet to learn.
And it's once a year.
And it's once a year.
And today you were on the floor,
Yes.
sharing your insights. What is a key insight you wanted to share to the audience today?
Look, the overarching message is the future is coming sooner than you think. To understand where it's going, do not look in the rearview mirror at what's happened for 100 years in the past. Look to where things are going. And then here is the hard part. Then you must jump into the future. If you're going to get ahead, like Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg or Jensen Huang, you have to take a risk. And we help you take the most qualified, smartest bets you can.
And you're one person who's met Steve Jobs. So what do you remember that not many people talk about?
So I grew up 6 miles from Steve Jobs. I'm 1 year apart in age. We went to high school apart. I intersected a lot in life when I was controller, and I actually sat next to him for dinner at his last major event. It was called Jobs Last Summer, where President Obama dined with 12 of the leading figures in Silicon Valley. I think he's one of the most extraordinary people I ever met. He completely disintermediated at least 4 or 5 industries.
That's true.
Successfully, game-changing. And he was tough, somewhat irascible, but in his later years when I got to know him the best, I thought he was an incredibly thoughtful, kind person with real empathy. And that's something that I think a lot of today's CEOs could learn from. Brilliant, but with a creative and empathetic side.
Now we talk about empathy, and that's a question I like to ask is, when you meet founders, how much of that empathy are you looking for?
We're looking for people with extraordinary drive, with a chip on their shoulder, who understand the importance of moving quickly and motivating and driving and demanding a high standard. But you don't want to berate people or threaten them, because then you lose your best talent. One of the issues that's come up, to give you a real world example today, is I believe Tesla's falling behind Waymo. And some would say, well, I think that's because Tesla's not using LiDAR and Waymo has this tech advantage. I think that's part of it, but I think one of the biggest reasons is Tesla has become a revolving door for executives because it's become so hard to work there. That really can hold you back. Great leaders like Hewlett and Packard, like Jobs, like Jensen Huang, people follow them to the moon, and you want to be that sort of person.
Perfect. Steve, it was so good to interview you. Thank you so much.
Merci beaucoup. I thank you. You are a spectacular interviewer. I'm honored to be here.
Thank you, thank you.
All
Thank you,
right.
Steve.
You bet.